Hello, everyone. Uh, how are you guys doing? Hope you all are doing well. I want to give a special thanks to Nomfro team and the team for making this successful. So my name is Trevor, and I will be your moderator for the day. So I want to introduce Dr. Bryant, a wealth architect and a change maker, serial entrepreneur, investor, and a thought leader, built and sold two multi-million dollar healthcare empires, now empowers others to create generational wealth through passive income and smart investing. Founder of United and Impactful, a nonprofit driving change in marginalized communities. What's our mission? To democratize prosperity and ignite global impact. And we know where she leads, the industries follow. So, Dr. Bryant, the floor is yours. Feel welcome and at home. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for having me. I had such a good time with you guys on Monday, and I am so glad to be back. So thank you so much for those who are able to join in, and thank you to NTEEP for having me speak today. All right, so good morning, everybody. I want to jump right into this conversation because this is one of my most favorite topics to talk about, this topic that we're going to talk about today. It's important to understand that formulating your business isn't just about LLCs and things of that nature. There's a very strategic way and very particular reasons why you should formulate your business in the ways that we're going to discuss today. In addition to talking about how business formation is important, we're going to talk about some real life examples. So I hope that you are able to apply the examples that I give today during the presentation. And I hope that makes it a little bit better than just giving information about, LLCs, C Corps, and things of that nature. So Mr. Trevor here did a wonderful job of introducing me and who I am. So we're going to go ahead and skip that. And we're going to go right into what you're going to learn today. So today we are going to talk about the principles and the foundations of what you need to formulate a business. We're going to talk about strategies to protect your business and your personal self from liabilities with your business. And we're going to talk about growth framework, okay? So one of the main reasons why it's good to format your business a certain way, there's three key elements, right? And we're going to talk about those three key elements today. The first one is asset protection. We're going to go in detail with these three elements, but the first one is asset protection. It means you guys are starting businesses. The businesses are assets. You need to protect them. The second thing is scalability, right? How can your business grow? How you set the foundation for your business is going to be direct, and the growth of it is going to be directly impacted by how you establish the formation of it. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about how you can use your business to create legacy, right? And how you format your business is going to directly affect if it's something that can be a legacy creator. So let's start with asset protection strategies, right? So when you formulate your business, and we're going to go into details about LLCs and all that stuff later, but when you format your business, it's important to understand that you're structuring a business in order to separate all your assets. By separating all of your assets, you're in essence separating out your liabilities. So you want to create shields around your business. You want to create shields around your personal self, and you want to create shields around your personal property. And that's what this formation does for you and for your businesses. So you're going to create the LLCs, you're going to create the C Corps and things of that nature. But the reason why you're doing that is to make sure that you protect the assets that you're building, okay? Building and formatting for scalability. Whenever you're deciding how you want to format your business, it's important to kind of think forward, right? I think we briefly touched upon on Monday's call about a business plan after you did your feasibility study, right? And so if you're planning your business, when you're putting together the plan, you should also include what is an exit strategy? What is an end goal? At what point am I going to look to expand or, like I said, exit? So establishing your business so that you can look at the future and the expansion possibilities that you have is very crucial in the very, very beginning. Whether you're thinking about coming in with partners, whether you're thinking about having multiple locations, that's something that you want to understand in the beginning so that you can properly set up your business. If you remember on Monday, if you were here and you remember on Monday me talking about there are certain businesses that require a license in order to start that business. Attorneys was one example I gave, physicians is another example I gave. Things that are professional businesses, they're usually tied to a license, so a doctor, a clinic. In some states, you have to have a doctor on the business in order to open that business. Well, just because you're not a physician or a doctor doesn't mean that you can't open that type of business, right? If you remember me talking about on Monday, can a non-healthcare professional own a healthcare business? Well, absolutely it can. And it all is going to be based on how a business is formatted and how it's structured. If you have a partnership and you partner with somebody who has the license that you need, but you still have to put extra measures in place to protect yourself because you're the non-licensed person, right? And that's where things like management service organization companies or holding companies come into play. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Having a legacy-driven design is going to help you whenever it comes to ensuring that you can either pass on the business that you're trying to create or what the plan is going to be for you to pass it on, or in the event that something happens to you, that your heirs can do what they need to do with the business in order to either sell it or manage it or whatever the case may be. I'm going to use the healthcare example again because that's just one of the easiest. But if I have a healthcare practice and my son, who is not a healthcare professional, he's my heir, I want to make sure that the business is set up and it's running in a way that even if something happens to me tomorrow, he still has a say in what happens in that business. Okay. So it's all about structuring it and forming the business in a manner that can be passed down, even if you specifically aren't there to be able to run it. Okay. And so we're going to go into a little bit of detail about that. So of course, whenever you're formatting your business, you want to make sure that you're choosing the right business model, right? Are you a service-based business? Are you a product-based business? Are you a digital-based business, right? Because that, whether you're offering a service, a product, or you're fully digital, that may determine whether you're going to be setting up LLCs and things of that nature. Now let's get into the legal structures, right? And so we have LLCs, which is a limited liability corporation, okay? And then we have a corporation. S Corp is just a tax designation, so that's not a legal structure, but you can have a corporation, or you can have a limited liability corporation, or you can have sole proprietor. I typically don't encourage individuals to start out sole proprietor because then you're automatically commingling your business with your personal assets. And that's what you want to avoid doing. But some people, start out that way. Let's say if I'm a cook that's opening a food truck, or if I'm an esthetician that's doing esthetician services out of my home, maybe I'm just starting out as a sole proprietor. How you set up your business is also going to affect the taxes that you're going to pay, right? Like how you're structured will determine how the government decides to tax you. Now that's here in the United States. I don't know if it's the same in West Africa, but I know here in the US, how you establish your business is going to affect how you're taxed. Okay. Slide here. Now, of course, there's some documentation that you need whenever you get ready to get started getting your business together. And I've included some of them here for you. Of course, you've got your articles of corporation. You've got your operating agreement, which that's where everything is detailed out. And it says who's partners, who gets what percentage, what's the profit split, and it's the legal kind of specifics of the business, right? And then last but not least, one of the other most important documents that you have is your corporate bylaws. So you establish all of that in the very beginning. You can have somebody help you. You can have an attorney help you draw this paperwork up. But what I do with my clients is I give them the template and I tell them to go through it, fill out as much as they can, and then just have their attorney review it because it's a cost savings, right? You know, on Monday, we talked about startup costs and how they can start to grow very quickly, but it's a cost savings whenever you just have an attorney review your documents versus draw up your full documents because they charge by the hour. Your government requirements, you know, there's going to be licenses that you need, you know, county license, specific permits, and your tax ID number. And that's where the government is saying, you know, you're classified as a certain business, you're classified in a certain tax bracket. This is how the government will tax you to ensure that your business is paying the proper taxes. You're also going to make sure that you have your financial setup. It's important to go through these steps and go through them in the way that I'm talking about them, right? Making sure you have your documents, making sure you have your government requirements, and then setting up your business bank account, your merchant accounts, and your accounting systems that your bookkeeper or CPA will help you manage. Because after you get everything set up properly, that's how your business can begin to earn credit, right? So just like you have credit as an individual, your business will also have credit. You want your business to have its own credit because eventually you will start to have your funding options, you know, separate funding options strictly for your business. You will get credit cards, you will get loans, you will get debt in the business, and it won't be tied to you specifically. So we're talking about making sure, remember, asset protection. We're separating you as the individual from the business because the business is another liability. In your articles of in your operating agreement, you're going to lay out the ownership and equity structure. So I mentioned in that document, it's going to talk about who the owners are, who the managing members are, what percentages they have, and what how you guys have the business structured. Like, is it a partnership? Is it an LLC? And things of that nature, right? Throughout that document, you know, and in the corporate bylaws, the other document I spoke about, you're also going to lay out how the managing members will be paid. If your managing members and your governing body, right? That's the governing body is a group of individuals that are, in addition to the owners or the founders, they have a say in helping you come up with ideas for the business, and you kind of report out that information. Typically, you would want to invite somebody from the county and individuals that's just third party outside of the business itself, okay? So how are they going to get paid? What we do is we pay our governing board quarterly. So we only have quarterly meetings and we pay them for their quarterly meetings, and that's it. It's not like they're an employee of the business. So having all of that lined out in your bylaws and your operating agreement is very important. What the other thing that it should say in those documents that we're talking about is it should talk about transition of leadership, okay? You heard me mention exit planning, like, okay, if we decided to sell, but what happens if, something happens to you unexpectedly, there's an accident and you can't work, or, whatever the case may be. So if you can't speak for yourself and you can't operate the business, then you want to make sure that the transfer of leadership is already clearly documented out before you need for the transfer to happen, right? So if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Okay. All right, now this is my favorite part, because we are going to talk a little bit about this real life structure. And this is the example I'm going to go over with you is exactly how I have my businesses set up. Okay. So all of my businesses are owned by a family trust. If you were here on Monday, you heard me say, control everything, own nothing, right? It's important to separate out your personal and your assets very as separate as you possibly can, right? So everything, all of the businesses and all of my personal assets are owned under a family trust. Within that family trust, there are holding corporations, or some call them management service organizations, right? These are just like it says, a holding company. These companies, all they do is hold my LLCs, okay? And I have those in place because they're an extra layer of protection, okay? This ensures that if something happened to me, my son, we have now established his own trust. He used to be the beneficiary of the family trust, okay? So if something happened to me, that means none of my businesses and none of my personal assets have to go through court in order for him to take over. It means he can just step in and take over as if he was still me. But now we have set him up, now that he's an adult and he's starting to make his own money, my son's 22, what we did was set him up with a trust. So now his trust is the beneficiary of my trust, which holds all of our LLCs, okay? Now, how does that look? Because that's probably confusing. And I'm sure once we get to the Q&A, you'll have a lot of questions about that. And I hope you do, because this part is very, very important. But this is how it looks, okay? So we have up here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, and there's some added to this, but we're just going to go with this example. We have up here the family trust that I established years ago, okay? Within the family trust, like I mentioned, there's holding corporations. So in one holding corporation, I have all of my real estate, investing, and all of the properties are under here as well. Then I have my real estate company, because we do transactions. My son and I, we do transactions for commercial real estate, and he's a residential agent. Then I have a ranch and an inn where we're building a way to sustain our own way of living in the event that, that there's another pandemic, right? So we're building that currently, a ranch and an inn. So that's over here. That's in this holding company, because this is going to be a business. We're going to make money from it, as well as all the other things. But yet on Monday, if you remember, I said I worked with healthcare professionals. I've owned 2 multi-million-dollar healthcare companies. That's completely separate from real estate stuff, right? So I have a completely separate holding corporation over here. Healthcare staffing agency, that's its own LLC. Medical and wellness spa, that's its own business and LLC. I also teach classes for people to learn how to do the services. So that's its own LLC. And then I do coaching and consulting for entrepreneurs. So that's its own LLC, okay? But wait, there's another one. There's my personal asset holding corporation. So cars, my RV, my boat, my home, everything personal is in another holding corporation. Completely separate from this one. And The reason why is because if something were to happen at one of my real estate properties, okay, let's say somebody was touring it and then they leaned on the banister and the banister broke and they fell. In that scenario, let's say that they broke their leg, okay? So they broke their leg on my property. Now, if they wanted to, they tried to sue me because I have all these other assets. Remember the ranch and the inn, I have my consulting company, my staffing agency, all these other businesses. If everything was all under one LLC, or if everything was in my personal name, that person who's suing me, the lawyer, is going to say, oh, this person's net worth is this much. They would give a large number because they would look at all of my assets, right? And, but instead, by having it all separated, all they can do is sue me for the worth of the property that they injured themselves in because it's its own separate LLC. So I hope that is helpful to you because that asset protection piece is one of the most important reasons why you have to have several different LLCs and you don't want to have everything all tied together. That means even your personal house, that means even like your personal car. All of those things are very, very, very important to have separate. Because if you've ever heard of somebody getting sued and then they end up losing their home, it's because, somebody getting sued at like a restaurant or something, and then they end up losing their home. It's typically because they have all of these things mingled and everything is under their personal name. So I hope this is very helpful. Like I said, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, and it's really important to ensure that you understand. So I really hope that you guys are really taking it in. Okay, so why structure this way? I already kind of talked about that. You want to have legal protection. You want all of your liability to be contained within each entity. Okay, what you have, I'm going to go back actually. What you have going on over here, you don't want this stuff to be affected. So everything needs to be separate. Okay, it helps simplify your management, right? Again, if you have your separate LLCs, then whatever's going on in this one LLC, whoever's helping you management, they understand this is what's going on in this LLC. Transfer ready. Okay. If I was going to sell one of my businesses, okay, if I was going to sell, let's say, I sold my healthcare staffing agency. Okay. It was very easy for me to just fill out a form and transfer this business. I didn't have to affect my family trust at all because there's this middleman here that's holding on to the other LLCs. So it was very easy to transfer. And like I said, if you're passing it on to somebody, we're talking about legacy creation. So if you're passing it on to your family members, your son, or even your cousin or whoever, right? It's an ease of transfer without involving the government. And then last but not least, there's, obvious tax benefits. You can optimize the different corporations to help minimize the burden of the taxes that you have to pay whenever it comes to having like an S corp or things of that nature. All of my holding corporations are S corps. My LLCs in the beginning, they are not S corps because that's being taxed a little bit higher. But one of the main reasons why I got my real estate license wasn't to do a lot of real estate trade transactions. It was just to ensure that all of the practices that I did on the real estate investing side, I would get extra tax write-offs and benefits from that by having my license. And being able to have a business that's tied to that license for now, right? So ease of transfer, whether it's a sale or whether you're passing it on to your family members, simplified management, tax optimization throughout the different types of business structures, and most importantly, liability protection, okay? So whenever you create this infrastructure of these different LLCs owning other LLCs, you want to make sure that you have some key elements, and those key elements are going to be your bookkeeping system, basically. Now, we use QuickBooks because it's just the easiest. I can have several companies under one account. My CPA can log in. I don't have to give them direct access to my bank account. They can just do everything through QuickBooks, but there are other ones, okay? You wanna, again, make sure everything with your business and everything with personal is divided. You heard me mention on that previous slide that we have, I have my toys, I've got my RV, I've got my boat. I don't want to lose those. So if something happens at one of my real estate investment properties, I don't want somebody coming after them. So they're sitting in their own LLC, okay? Completely separate. Nobody can say, oh, Dr. Jami Bryant owns all this stuff, because who's the owner of it? My family trust, right? Whenever you have these financial systems that you're creating for your business, you want to ensure that you have access to it 24/7, okay? The reason why is, if you're like me, right now for me, it's 2 a.m. here where I'm at, right? If I'm working, and I do international, I help people invest internationally. So I've worked with people who've invested in Spain and the islands and things of that nature. I'm working with somebody right now who's investing in Japan. So I'm on different time zones. I'm working with people who are on different time zones, and I'm using my resources at different times. My team is also in different time zones, and they're using my resources at different times. So ensuring that you have that access to it all the time is very, very important. So I want to recap just a minute before we go on. The foundations of your business is not just open an LLC, get your EIN, things of that nature. There are 3 key points. What are those 3 points? Scalability, legacy building, and asset protection, okay? Making sure that you think and you consider those 3 things as you're building your business is super, super important. In addition to protecting the businesses themselves, right, with your different LLCs, you also want to make sure that you bring on other asset protection strategies. And you can do that through intellectual property protection. So your name, your brand, whatever it is that you're creating for your business, you can trademark that stuff. You can register, you can copyright it, you can tell other people, hey, guess what? You can't use this because I have it trademarked, okay? You want to include contracts in NDAs, non-solicitation, and non-competes within your business whenever you're doing business with other business owners. So any business-to-business transactions that you're doing with another business owner, or you're bringing in people to help you as a contracted employee, it's important to have these specific 3 contracts in place with them. And that's the non-solicitation, the non-disclosure, and the non-compete. And I already mentioned that you want to assign holding corporations just because it's a business in and of itself, but it holds the most money, okay? And I haven't gotten into it, but whenever you are managing your money shouldn't all be sitting in one account, okay? Now, I'm not a tax professional. I don't want to get too much into it, but you should really have 4 different bank accounts to manage your business. And it should be like an expense account, what's going out of it. It should be a revenue account, what's coming in. You should have a separate account just for your bills, right? What's paying the bills. And then you should have like your reoccurring operational bills, not like vendor bills and things of that nature. And then you should have money that you're putting aside, right? Because eventually, at this point right now, you may be looking for investors, right? You may be looking for funding, but eventually you'll grow your business and you'll start having your money make money for you through being able to become an investor, right? That's one of the greatest things about owning a business is you can make enough money to start using your money to make money. Okay, so eventually you'll become an investor, and you'll start looking at how you can use money, how you can get tax benefits by investing in certain things, and how you can get ROI on the profits that you're making. Of course, whenever you think about your tax strategies and how you can optimize, as we talked about, structuring your entities, the way that you do it, very important. You can layer your income, right? I have a nonprofit organization. As a nonprofit founder, you're technically not an owner, but I can be an employee of my nonprofit, so I can still make money from my nonprofit as a CEO or as a director. Okay, so I can make money from that. I can make money from my businesses that I own as an employee. My son can make money as an employee of each business. So each business that I run, we're employees of, because my son, like I said, he's an adult. So every one of the businesses, then he gets to be an employee of, I get to be an employee of, and we're making money on top of the profit. Okay. And then, of course, with your trust, you get your trust set up properly. You get it put into the proper account. You're earning high interest rates, and you're not touching that money unless you absolutely need to. So you're getting a tax benefit. It's not a tax cut, but you're not having to pay tax on the trust, the money in the trust, as long as you have it set up in the proper type of account. Whenever we talk about building to scale and making sure that the foundation of your business is appropriate, we talked about some of the documents that you need, but once you have the business established, there are some things that you will need, right? So you want to make sure that you have your policies, all of your standard operating agreements, and you want to try to implement as much automation as you possibly can. One of the things that I do with business owners that I work with is making sure that they understand what their business is valued at, because I work with a lot of people who are looking to sell their business, right? So in order to sell a business, it can't just be tied to one person. The more automation you have, the more value your business will have, because somebody who's looking to buy a business that's already established, they're not looking to come in and work just as hard as they were when they were a W-2 employee. They want to come in and they want to see something that's working already for itself, okay? Of course, you want to make sure that you're measuring your results through data and have centralized control for your business. So you have to have your systems, right? And I kind of talked about that on Monday, but you have to have your systems in place. The other thing that you want to focus on whenever you're building the foundation of your business, I already mentioned this, but I'm just reiterating. What is your exit strategy? What is your exit planning? Do you want to run this building for the next 20 years? I gave an example of partnering with a physician. So let's say I own a clinic, right? So I own a clinic. And I owned that clinic for 20 years. So let's say I started it when I was 30 and now I'm 50, and I owned that clinic for 20 years. As part of my exit planning, I need to start bringing in another physician. If I'm in one of those states that requires a physician to be owner, right? So you bring that other physician in, and they are your business partner for 10 years, let's say. Now I'm 60 years old. Now I'm getting ready to retire. The business itself can continue running. I don't have to sell it because it's the business itself that can continue running, and my family trust still owns the control of the business, unless the other partner wants to buy us out of it, or my son out of it, whoever my heir is. They can buy us out, and then now they can then use that business to build their own legacy. So thinking about that, having that forward thinking is very important when you're establishing the business, because again, how you establish it in the beginning is going to help dictate the ease of how you can exit when it's time to. And hopefully you can exit when you want to. Because sometimes, if you think about it, we have to exit a business because we have to, things happen and, life happens, right? So just having those measures in place is important. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed talking about building the foundations of your business and just really talking about developing your legacy. And I'm super excited to hear the questions that you have. So I want to turn it back over to the moderator so we can have time for questions today.
Okay, so I want to say thank you so much for that insightful session. So I'll go to the question. And the first question, let me see. Okay, so this question was asked by Master Empowering Platform. He asked, I will like to know from you, what are the tax implications of different businesses formation? Where is LLC, the S corp, C corp, etc.
So again, I'm not a CPA, but I know that if your business is, if you have an LLC, if you have a corporation, right? So corporation is more public where people have shares, you can allow people to have shares. And typically you wouldn't establish that type of business until you have many more employees and you're a little bit more of a bigger business. But if you are a corporation, you're going to get taxed higher than you would if you were an LLC. Now, I don't know the exact percentages, but I know that LLCs get taxed lower if you're just regular LLC. If you're LLC and then you opt to have a S corp tax implication, then you're taxed a little bit higher, right? So that's the level. LLC is the lowest tax. Sorry. LLC is the lowest tax level. LLC with the S corp is the middle one, and then C corp is taxed at the highest rate. If you are a sole proprietor, your taxes are gonna run you about 30% because they're taxing sole proprietors as they would a person. Because sole proprietor, you don't have that protection. You don't have that limited liability protection or the corporation protection. So you're taxed as an individual.
Okay, so thank you for that. And also another question from him, he's asking, what are the key steps involved in forming a new business? What legal structures are available for business formation and how do they differ?
The legal structures, you're gonna have your sole proprietor. I think this is what he's asking. You're gonna be a sole proprietor, you're gonna have your LLC, you're gonna be a corporation, or you can have partnerships. A partnership would be like, and I've done this with my businesses, like if my consulting company and another consulting company, we want to come together and we want to host an event or we want to have a platform together, right? We now create a partnership where these two LLCs now have a partnership. They are in essence their own partnership, their own LLC. They have their own way of earning money, and they have their own taxes that they have to pay that partnership. So those are the different formations that you can do.
Great. So the third question, Emmett K. Max has asked, can a family trust be considered as a group of companies? If not, what is the difference between the two?
So a family trust is not a group of companies. A family trust is a controller, right? It's just legal documents that say that basically is a holder of all of your assets, okay? You're gonna have your trust that is established as its own entity, and then you're gonna have your trust account, where that's where you have all of your money that you hear about people being trust fund kids and things of that nature. So that's trust account is different from actual trust, which is its own entity. but not anybody can just go to the government and say, I'm going to open up this. You have to have a legal background in order to establish that. So it's important to work with an estate planning attorney whenever you're ready to establish that family trust. Now, the estate planning attorney isn't going to tell you everything that I told you today, right? What they're going to tell you is, yeah, I can open up the trust for you, sure. But you have to tell them, oh, I want to do it this way. Every time I open up a new business, or if anything changes within my business, I just email my estate planning attorney and I say, hey, I bought a new boat. Can you transfer ownership into this? Hey, we just started a new business. Can you transfer ownership to this? And then they fill out the paperwork. So I hope that
Okay.
answers the question.
Okay, so I have another question from Blackson Kavinga. So what are the strategies that you can recommend for a startup that just launched MVP and also KPI?
So for your KPIs, what you want to do whenever you're first launching, right? You've done your feasibility, you've done the foundation. When you're measuring your KPIs, it depends on what the business is, right? That's going to determine what it is that you're going to measure. Those are ongoing, and you have to look at them and you have to address them at least once a week. If you have a team, that this needs to be a team conversation in order to ensure that you have everybody's on the same page with understanding of your KPIs. And so I think the question is, how strategically can you formulate your business in order to make sure that you're keeping track of all your KPIs? And the answer really is, that comes from you and your team. I talked about your governing board. I talked about you having your team, whoever your employees were. You just need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. You're looking at the data, all the data you need to look at, everything from marketing to where the money's going, that's operational, and employees and sales. You have to keep track of all of that stuff, and that's your KPIs that you're going to be keeping track of.
So great. Okay, another question from Agromet. They're asking, I would like to know if the implications of having different bank accounts for the same business, if there is any.
Yes, definitely. You never want to have all of your money in one account. So again, I encourage everybody, a tax professional is going to tell you that you need 4. But in the beginning, it's hard to manage 4 accounts, right? Even if you do have help, a bookkeeper or whatnot. But at the very least, you should have 2 bank accounts, because you don't want all of your money that came. Let's say that you did one day $250,000 in sales in one day, okay? And then what happens if your account gets hacked? Because that's a real thing that can happen, right? Or what happens if your account gets hacked? The bank seizes your accounts for some reason. Then again, you've got everything all in one account. And so I'm glad that you asked that question, because even though I mentioned having the different bank accounts, at least one of them needs to be with a separate bank, right? Because let me go back to the example of being sued. If you have sitting in an account, $500,000, $1 million, all of this money, and then somebody comes to sue you, there's a chance the bank could put your funding on hold, right? And you don't want that to happen to you, or you want to reduce the risk of that happening. So that's another reason why it's just really important to make sure that you have more than one bank account. It's okay to move money. You can wire money to yourself, whenever you need to. You definitely don't want large sums of money sitting in any type of personal account, the IRS will find it a lot faster and they will want their cut. So making sure that you're utilizing those professional business accounts is going to be really important as well. Mhm.
Great. Thank you for that. So we have another question from Yam Guy. He or she's asking, so is it advisable to have your business as an LLC or as a corp?
It depends on how big your business is, and it depends on what it is. Um, but typically, you're going to start out with an LLC. Unless you have like some major grants and you're starting out big with a large group of people and multiple partners, then typically you'll start out as an LLC. You can always switch, right? After a few years, you can always switch to a corporation. But again, you have to remember that you're going to be taxed higher. So, that first year, remember we talked about the first 3 years, half of businesses don't succeed. If you're already struggling to start getting that return, that reoccurring revenue coming in, you don't want the IRS to tell you you owe, a whole bunch of money after your first year or even your second year. So yes, starting out as an LLC is okay. And then also you have to remember that if you're a corporation, that means you're public. You're a publicly traded company. So, you can sell stock in your business. You can sell shares in your business. So another reason why it's good to start out with the LLC, because you may not be there yet. You may not be at the place where you're ready to do that.
Oh, great. So another question comes from Keeping Up with SB. The question is, what strategy can you recommend for a new startup?
So as far as formation, what I would tell you, if you're brand new, you want to go ahead and establish your LLC. Then this is what I recommend. Not everybody likes to do this, but you want to establish your LLC so that you can get it going. Then you want to establish, after that, 2 holding corporations. And then you want to establish your family trust. That's what I recommend. One holding corporation is going to own your LLC. The other holding corporation is going to own your personal assets.
Great. So another question comes from Agromet again. So they're asking, what are the key steps for sole proprietorship, business, and foundation building challenges?
So you said, what are the key steps for a sole
Yeah,
proprietor?
yes, so proprietorship, business, and foundation building. What are the challenges and the challenges? Yeah.
So to me, like I mentioned, the challenge is that there's no asset protection. Those 3 key things that we talked about, asset protection, scalability, and legacy generating, those are out the window with a sole proprietor. If I'm, like I said, the example I used, I think, was a chef. If I'm a chef and I decide I want to go open a business, I'm just going to open a sole proprietorship because I'm going to use my chef license or certificate, and I'm going to open up a food truck. Then that means that food truck can't survive without me. If I'm not there to do the cooking and feed the people, then the business doesn't exist. It also means that if somebody gets sick and they say, hey, I got sick at Dr. Jamie's food truck, I'm going to sue her. Then everything that's in my personal name becomes part of what people can sue you for. So those are the downsides. The good side is it's very easy. You just go online, you fill out one paperwork. It's easy. One piece of paperwork. You can do it yourself. It's simple. It's easy. But again, you are not operating with that protection. So I don't encourage it.
Okay, so we have another question from Bafana Gubane. So the question is, if you are in a partnership business with an individual who has his own family trust fund like yourself? In
Mhm.
protecting your assets, which family trust can you use? This is in all aspects of business and legacy.
Mhm. So you guys gonna have that conversation, right? If you guys are both 50-50 owners, which that's not a real thing, somebody has to be majority. And law says that the majority owner gets first right of refusal. So basically, if you have a trust and I have a trust, but I'm 51% owner and you're 49, then first right of refusal goes to me. I get to say my family trust is the owner of the business, and your family trust is the beneficiary in the event that something happens to me. So you can have a addendum to your trust, to your family trust, right? Like I said, my son is my beneficiary. You can have an addendum to it for one specific leg. Hey, this business I'm on with a partner. So if something were to happen to me, this partner now becomes 100% owner, and they now get to step in, and their trust is the beneficiary of this one business. And again, you just need to establish that in the beginning. But typically, majority owner is the one who gets first right of refusal. Or I could say, you know what, I've got all these other businesses, even though I'm 51% owner, because I put most of the money in, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that if something were to happen to me, you get to be, your trust can take over from here.
Great, thank you, Dr. Bryant. Another question comes from Yem Guy. He's asking, are family trusts taxed?
So if the money is sitting there, right, you have a trust account, that you don't get taxed on it until you start moving the money. That's why you have to set it up in a special trust account. You can't just go to any bank and say, I want to open up a bank account. You have to set it up with a trust account. So there's a very specific account that you're not going to be getting taxed on it until you start spending it, moving it.
Great. So thank you. Another question comes from Lazarus Mambo. So
Yeah.
during the sale of shares or transition, what mistake would you advise one not to make that will lead to the failing of the company?
Don't sell too many shares and out don't sell so many shares that you give somebody else majority ownership of your business. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people don't pay attention to. As they're selling off shares, they're not paying attention to their own shares that they have and how much of the shares they have. So let's just say if I have a business and there are 1,000 shares available to purchase, but I only bought in 10 at the beginning just to get it started. If I sold off 90 shares, then that means my business technically is owned by somebody else.
Yeah, great. So another question from Ola Kunle. His question is, when running multiple accounts for the business due to bank network issues, sometimes will the tax be charged across all the accounts or a single account?
So you get taxed on your business revenue, right? Your accountant will file your taxes at the end of the year. So you're not specifically taxed on one bank account versus another bank account. It's on the business as a whole. And whenever you're running a business, you need to work with an accountant who understands, because they can save you so much. They can save you money, they can save you time, they can save you headache, they can save your business. So the taxing comes from the taxes that your business files at the end beginning of the year. But working with a professional CPA is going to be imperative.
Great, great. So another question from Russ Revista. They're asking, I'm unable to manage my assets alone and without close family, but I want to apply family trust in my business. to avoid squabbles, as this used as explanation as an example, what strategies can I adapt?
Create your own trust. You can still be part of your family trust and create your own. In the example that I gave, my son was the beneficiary of our family trust, and I only have one son. So it's really just him. But now that he's older, and like I say, he's starting, his real estate career, and he's going to be getting real estate property, investment property as well. And he has his business as well. So now we have established a trust for him. And so I just changed the beneficiary from him as an individual to his trust. And for you, you can establish your own trust. And then that trust is the owner of this business that you're creating. And you can make the beneficiary of your trust your family trust, so that if something happens to you, they'll be able to manage your business or the funds that come.
Okay, great. So another question from Ola. Oh, let me see.
We lost our moderator. Well, I hope that you guys, questions were all answered. While we're waiting for our moderator to join back in, I'll just say that I put this QR code here for anybody from this organization. You can do a free 15-minute consultation with me. If we need to go deeper to a 1-hour conversation, then we can definitely do that. But if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to a booking link where you can book that free 15 minutes with me. And if your questions weren't able to be answered this evening, then I would love to chat with you and we can answer those questions. I do see we have Jessica. Okay, good.
Yes, so sorry for Mr. Trevor. I think he was having network issues.
That's
But
okay.
thank you so much, Dr. Jami, for the wonderful session. I really learned a lot personally, and I believe the participants learned a lot as well. Like Dr. Jami mentioned, her details will also be in the description box in case you have further questions. You can reach out to her and then also book an appointment for consultation, and then she'll be there to answer the further questions. Okay, I see one last question on the screen. Can we just take that?
Yeah.
Okay, a question by San Diego. It says, what best approach when you have shares with partners who are not willing to contribute or are contributing very less? Like, what's the best approach to go about it?
Why would you have partners who aren't contributing? I think it's important to understand whenever you're building a business, right? Being in business is very serious. And when you're getting into business with other people, it's like you're married to that person, right? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. You're going to be contributing financially, and your business is your baby, right? You have to spend time growing this business, all those things. And so being in business with somebody who you don't necessarily feel like they're contributing as much as you are, you're already setting your business up with a negative connotation. You guys are going to hear this a lot throughout these next few weeks. I know I said it, and I said it both times that I spoke. 50% of the businesses that are started fail within the first 3 years, okay? If you're already talking about, hey, I've got this partner and they ain't contributing that much, and you haven't even started yet, we're not off to a good situation, okay? Sometimes the people who will support you the most in the business will be strangers. And so sometimes you have to look past the person that's right there in front of you saying, oh, I want to help you with this. Oh, I want to help you, Oh, yeah, I like this idea. I want to help you. If you know that person's habits and their habits don't match your habits to become successful and to build a long-lasting business that can truly change your life, the lives of your families, and the trajectory of a bunch of other families, because you're going to hire people and all this other stuff, then you shouldn't be working with them. And it's not personal. Like, it's not like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings. No, you have to have high emotional intelligence when you're starting a business. That means feelings to the side, and business is business. It's not about hurting people's feelings. It's about making data-driven moves, right? You heard me talk about all this data for the past few days. And at no time did I say don't hurt anybody's feelings, right? Because people's feelings are going to get hurt, and that's okay. This is just business. And so making sure that you're partnered with somebody who you can have conversation with, because at some point there may be some conflict, and you have to be able to, like two adults, have conflict resolution. So the answer to your question is, you're working with somebody who's not contributing, whether they're not putting in the effort or they're not putting in funds, because sometimes people give sweat equity, but if they're not doing that or they're not contributing the funds, then you don't need to be working with that person. That's just it.
Yes, very true. Thank you so much, Dr. Jami, once again for the wonderful session and then for answering our questions so wonderfully. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And it was so fun chatting with you guys and going over this presentation. So I look forward to learning more about you guys' business. So please make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. I want to stay connected with you guys so I can see all these wonderful, amazing businesses grow and flourish.
And I'm sure they will do that. Thank you. Before we end, please note that your attendance is very important. For each session has its own attendance. So after today's session, you please come back to the YouTube, and then under today's session, you go to the description box, and then the attendance link will be over there. Ensure you fill it out and submit it, and as it is very important. And if you have any additional questions, if you have one directed to Dr. Jami, like I said, her details will be in the description box as well. Or if you have a question for NTEEP, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn at NTEEP. We're on Instagram at NTEEP Connect. So do well to follow us on all the various social media handles. A special appreciation goes to our supporters and ecosystem partners. We have Nomfro Technologies, Spirit TV, Mary Ben, Ashuri Ubuntu Soft, and also Women Nice, as well as a lot of other supporters. So we really appreciate it. So for now, I would say goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow.